Ready. I want to thank everybody for being a part of this presentation. I want to thank the coaching staff of Souderton High School. Coach Moore, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to work with your program. I wanted to make a short video explaining who I am, what I do, and what the expectations for training are going to be. A little background about myself. I'm from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, went to University of Buffalo for college, played baseball there. After college, I was lucky enough to play professionally with the Cincinnati Reds organization, and currently I'm playing on Team Ireland, which I have been a part of the World Baseball Classic qualifiers, as well as the European Championships and the Olympic qualifiers. So really cool experience for me to represent a country in international play. I am the director of Uncommon Baseball as well, which is a training facility located in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. Along with that, I do coach a high school baseball team, Springside Chestnut Hill Academy, which is located in Philadelphia. I've been coaching there for a few years. Primarily, I work with, in context to strength conditioning, I work with baseball players that range from high school all the way up to professionally. So I wanted to briefly talk about what training is and what it ultimately isn't, and what the goals and expectations are for a training process. I think that's a really good place to start because, in my experience, when I onboard any clients, there's always the expectation of, hey, what is this going to accomplish? What are we trying to do here? And for me, I always try to educate and bring awareness to both the parent, the coaching staff, if I'm working with the school, and the athletes of what our actual goals are and what it is and isn't. So obviously our goals in the weight room is to work on qualities such as strength, power, mobility, motor control, hypertrophy, etc. What this isn't going to do, a training program isn't specific to getting you better at a sport or a movement. What it is we're working on getting you stronger in context of the weight room that hopefully can translate to on-field or in-pool performance. So training will definitely help you move better, build all those qualities, like I said, strength, power, mobility, hypertrophy, which ultimately can increase performance, but it ultimately will never replace the swimming technical work you get in the pool. I work with a bunch of baseball players, and the question I get all the time is, how do I throw harder? And the best exercise to throw harder is obviously progressive throwing. The other exercises in the weight room are augmenting that training goal there. So this is, even though I'm a strength conditioning coach, I do acknowledge that the technical aspect of the movement is the most important quality. For me, I want to just be supplement or an augmentation for you guys to get better in the pool. So when you look at that, a lot of people think just, hey, I'm just going to get stronger and it's going to solve all my problems. Sometimes that is the case. I've worked with many athletes that, especially the younger ones, we're looking at early high school years, that they put on 15 pounds of weight, they get X amount stronger, and all of a sudden their performance skyrockets. And that sometimes is the case. What I'm learning and what I've experienced with working with professional pitchers that already have a good strength base is getting that 5% stronger isn't the only thing that's going to make you better. There's so many other qualities that we can improve and solutions we have to increase your performance. And that's why when you do enter a training program, having a comprehensive evaluation process, understanding how you're moving, what you do really well and what you don't do really well will ultimately guide the training process. And I think that's the goal we're ultimately getting to, is individualizing this training process to make sure that the time we're investing in the weight room or in training, fitness, wherever it may be, you're getting the return on your investment that you want for your goals. And some people have goals, just, I want to bench 225. I want to get a little bit stronger. I want to gain 10 pounds. I want to lose 10 pounds. And that's fine. But for this, our goal here is to try to get you better at swimming. And that's going to be improving these qualities that were mentioned. All in all, if you equal out two swimmers, both having very similar technique, generally the stronger, more explosive swimmer is going to be the one that's faster. So the goal obviously is getting, to be more explosive off the blocks, improve your swimming, your stroke efficiency, moving better, in regards to the shoulder, the spine, etc. So that will be our primarily objective there in the weight room. And having, entering a training program, there will be days it can be very hard. right? We're not anything, training shouldn't be easy, but we're going to build up and progress to make each session harder and harder or more effective for you guys to continue to develop. So day one, it's not going to be the finished product. Our goal is to continue just to get 1% better every day, continuing to build really good habits so we can ultimately, over a long period of time, weeks, months, years, continue to get better. If swimming is our goal in college, if we're just doing this because we really enjoy it, ultimately, for the team perspective, we want to go out there and put our best foot forward and be able to develop and compete for championships within our league. And that's ultimately going to be the goal of our team there, is to win a championship. And it's always going to be quality over quantity. A big thing I preach when I'm training athletes, especially in the beginning, is I'm not a huge proponent of counting reps because I believe there should be a range that you shoot for. And this is an example, range you shoot for, but I believe that ultimately it takes away, if you're counting, it takes away the focus on what the movement is. And our biggest thing is we want to focus on doing very, very good reps over time and building that volume so we ultimately build a better foundation that we can continue to develop as we get into our latter years of high school. And if we get to college or in a college program, we're there as an impact freshman, not as a work in progress, if that makes sense. So that's going to look at, we want to be efficient with our training. We don't want to just get there, go an hour, be exhausted, and look in 6 weeks like we didn't get better. So the ultimate goal of training is definitely going to be hard at times, but it isn't at all times going to be the most exhausting thing you do every day. It should be a challenge, and you should embrace the challenge, but you should also understand that this is a process. A typical training session for you guys, we're going to be in a group of 30 to 40 swimmers. So it might look different than what you would look like individually. So the ultimate goal of this is to have a good, crisp 60 minutes that we come in. A warm-up's generally 5 to 10 minutes. The goal of a warm-up is to prepare the body for that training session. So if you're swimming, a warm-up should look a little different than if you're lifting, if you want a heavy squat, or if you're throwing. So the warm-up should ultimately match what you're trying to accomplish in that session. Usually 5 to 10 minutes, something quick. You should get your heart rate up, you should get a little sweat. This is a time where I do prescribe a lot of movements that from the screen I do in terms of a movement screen that the athlete may need to work on or get extra reps in at a low energy cost. After that, we will probably go into some kind of jumping, medicine ball, or sprinting circuit. Think of our most explosive movements. We generally want to do our explosive movements usually when we're the most fresh. So this is, obviously we have different various jumps, medicine ball throws for rotation, extension, flexion. So we're thinking about throwing a ball as hard as we can into a wall or into the ground, moving our body fast. And sprinting is one of the best things any athlete person can do from a nervous system perspective. It's one of the fastest things we can do in the weight room to train a nervous system to be able to turn on and off and go. So for our shorter distance sprinters, we want to make sure that when we're doing things at 110% and we're moving as fast as we can. And sprinting is a good way to build up that. Sprinting also has a lot of unique benefits for not only for pitchers that I work with, but for swimmers that aren't exposed to it as much. It does create a very good movement solution for some guys and girls. And it's ultimately something that can benefit just overall movement efficiency. After you go through that, which usually takes 10 minutes, and sprinting we will build up to. We're not going to go from day one, no sprinting, to day two, we're going to be 100% sprint for 10 reps. We're going to continue to build that up. Everything we do is progressed or regressed based on what each athlete will need at the time. Then we go into a lower body movement. That might be our big strength movement. Lower upper body, this program can be interchangeable depending on what our goal is of that day and what our goal in that cycle is. So what I would usually do is have a lower body movement. That's our big strength movement per se. Let's just use a squat, for example. We're squatting heavy. So instead of pairing that with another heavy upper body movement where our aerobic capacity may be challenged, we're going to pair that with some sort of arm care or corrective exercise, meaning, we're training the shoulder musculature or the forearm or some position that we want to continue to get better at that won't exhaust us for that following set of the squat. So we cycle back through. And the same thing can be done throughout it. If we go upper body, we can also do a lower body corrective or core movement or anything like that. So a lot of this is going to be focused on, since we only have 60 minutes and we have a big group, we're going to be focused on less movements, more reps at the movements to build that capacity. So this is something that if we're training twice a week, that might be twice a week, and that's all that you may do as a swimmer for the week. But there may be other swimmers that like to train on their own or like to have everything, in addition to that. And that's something definitely we can discuss there to work around that. I don't want somebody to be doing, too many things of once or not enough of something. So it's definitely a communication process. And this is just one example of what it could look like. The goal is ultimately going to be very flexible in terms of what we're doing. You come in each day, you guys are going through high school. It's very stressful. So sometimes we need to understand, okay, today we may have the pivot and this is the reason why, or you guys are competing that week and it's obviously going to be a little different each week. So a big thing I do with training is we have tests that we measure. So anything that can be measured can build buy-in for the athlete in terms of what they need to work on, or validate our training process. So if we do a vertical jump, or like you see that picture in the middle, which is called the arm care test. It's a dynamometry unit, which is a mini force plate which measures shoulder strength. And the following slide, I'm going to show you an example of how I use that with pitchers. But this is something that we're going to continually do to make sure that we're heading in the right direction for training. We don't go in anything blind. I want to make sure that, hey, if we're all doing this as a group and we're testing, let's just use the arm care test, for example, and we're measuring our shoulder strength. I want to make sure as the program goes through the weeks, we're getting exponentially stronger there. If it ever comes to the point where we see that we're getting weaker, that's a conversation needs to be had of, of what's going on. Is it a fatigue relation issue? Is it the program not being effective enough? So the performance testing and measuring these things is a great test of how well your program is at developing your athletes in these confines there. So like I said, I call this an arm care data. So I took around 20 of my athletes I trained. These are all pitchers. We did an initial strength test, which was week 1 of their program. This is a 4-test isometric-based testing. So we have 4 different movements. All of them are isometric-based testing, which is a fancy word for saying we're not moving, but we're exerting as much force as we can into an object. What we have 4 different shoulder positions. It's a wearable wrist strap. I place it on their wrists and they push into a box that can't be moved. So we can see how much force the shoulder can create. So as you can see, we had the initial testing, and generally we want to see in that third column, you see arm score. I like to have my athletes around 80 to 100% in their arm score, which is just what is their total strength in relation to their body weight. So it's a relative strength score, which, as you can see, there's some guys that are in that threshold and other guys that aren't. This isn't the end all be all test, but this is a good litmus test to see how strong the throwing arm is. And as you can see throughout this 6-week course, we saw very, very good results from this and huge improvements. And the cool thing about this is we only did this test once a week. So I wanted to only do it once a week because I didn't want my athletes to just get better at the test. I wanted to see if we're actually truly getting stronger. And that's a big thing. A lot of the data that strength coaches collect, it's hard to determine, is it my program that induced those results, or is it that they just got more comfortable with testing, got better at the test? And there may be a little mixture of both with this, but ideally we really prioritized taking care of the throwing arm prior to our throwing program that was towards the end of the off season. So this was done in the beginning of the off season, where we're building up our capacity throwing. So it's a very light workload, so we don't have to worry about fatigue. And we can see that a lot of guys, most of the guys, got into the threshold that we're really comfortable with. That's a good strength number. Same thing with this. I did another group of athletes that were testing a single leg broad jump. and I wanted to look at left and right leg discrepancy. Each of the athlete, it's really cool in this perspective where most movement in baseball is unilaterally based or one leg dominant. But at the same token, there is two legs on the ground at the same time in pitching. When you're loading into the ground, you're loading your back leg. As you transition, there's a small period of time when your arm is about to release the ball where 2 feet are on the ground. So yes, bilateral movements are very important, but it's also very important to understand is there a discrepancy between left and right leg? And by no means do you have to be perfectly symmetrical when you're moving. Shouldn't their right arm be just as strong as their left arm or vice versa? We would like that, but generally you don't throw as a baseball player with both arms. So we do prioritize the throw shoulder more. In regards to swimming, it is obviously we're in the pool, so we're resisting and overcoming some water resistance, but there is a huge unilateral component to it where one arm is going into flexion while the other is going in extension and vice versa. So there is, in the training, there should be we're going to do a lot of two-legged movements, two arm movements, but also single arm movements and single leg movements. And then this is just in context to why we did our training. The only goal for me in training for my pitchers was to increase their on-field performance. I really didn't care if they got stronger in a squat. I cared about did they get better at their sport? And the easiest way for baseball to just justify that or see that is through pitching velocity. There's obviously other metrics that we can collect with that, but for a pitching velocity standpoint, you can see that I took 3 of these athletes, and these are, and this is a conversation we can have where everybody's going to have a little different performance increase or decrease. So not everybody should expect when they're training to get the same results in the pool as one another. Some people might see a massive 20% decrease in their times. Some might also see 5. So just understanding that, and you guys can see here where these athletes all came at a different velocity threshold, and they also were different people. They had different needs. You can see that each of them did increase a huge amount, but it was all at a different pace. All these athletes were training 5 days a week. This was done through, as you can see, through 2 months, in June to August. But ultimately, they had different results, very similar but different. So when you're training, just know that if the guy next to you or the girl next to you increases their squat by 30 pounds and you only 10 pounds, that's nothing to be ashamed of or discouraged by. Your job is to continue just to be better for yourself and to always judge yourself based on what you were before. It's a really challenging thought process when you're in high school to do that, because you're going to see success in your peers, but your job is just to continue. You can only control what you can control, and what you control is what you do and how you perform. So just keep that in mind when we're moving forward training. And just wanted to wrap this up. I didn't want this to be a long conversation here, and obviously there's a lot more to training than what I've just outlined there, but I wanted to give you a little bit of information about myself, talk a little about the expectations of the training, and kind of what we're doing moving forward. If you have any questions, I understand Coach Moore can provide a communication link for us to talk to, if that's for you guys as athletes or your parents. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody and answer any questions that you may have. Again, thank you, and look forward to working with you guys.